What if one encounter could change your life forever? Wanjiru, a 60-year-old woman from Kenya, had never imagined she would step foot in the US, but when she did, something unexplainable happened. A stranger appeared in her moment of need. Was he an angel in disguise? Stay tuned for this unbelievable true story. Did this woman meet an angel in the US? Discover the miraculous testimony of Wanjiru, a Kenyan woman whose faith led her from poverty to an extraordinary journey to the US, where a mysterious encounter left her questioning if she had met an angel. A story of hope, faith, and divine intervention. The testimony of Wanjiru. A divine encounter. Wanjiru had known poverty all her life. At 60 years old, she had endured countless days of hunger, nights of despair, and years of hoping that one day something, anything, would change. Living in a small village in Kenya, even affording a meal was a struggle. But one day, everything changed. It all began when she heard about the Vincentian Prayer House, VRC, a place where the broken found solace and the hopeless discovered faith. Skeptical but desperate, she decided to visit. The prayer house was filled with people seeking divine intervention, their voices rising in supplication. As she knelt, a priest approached her, handing her a small piece of paper with Bible verses. "These scriptures will guide you," he said. Something stirred deep within her as she clutched the paper. She went home, determined to read the verses daily. Each morning she whispered the words, her faith growing stronger. Then a thought entered her mind, one so absurd that she almost laughed. She, Wanjiru, a poor woman who had never traveled beyond her village, would apply for a US visa. It was unthinkable, but the thought would not leave her. Summoning all her courage, she found an internet cafe and filled out the visa application. She had no money, no sponsor, and no connections in the US, but she had something else: faith. 1 month later, an email arrived. Her heart pounded as she read it. Visa interview scheduled. She gasped. It was real, but a daunting question loomed. How would she pass the interview? On the day of the interview, Wanjiru wore her best clothes, worn but clean. She stepped into the embassy, surrounded by nervous applicants, clutching thick folders of documents. She had nothing but her faith. When her turn came, she approached. The counter, her hands trembling, the officer peered at her. "Why do you want to go to the US?" 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind. Should she lie? Should she explain her suffering? But instead she smiled and said, "I want to go and see snow." Silence. The officer stared at her, then did something unexpected. He stamped her passport. Approved. Tears welled in her eyes. She could hardly believe it. Wanjiru, the woman who had barely enough to eat, was going to America. The day of her flight arrived, and for the first time she boarded an airplane. The roar of the engines, the sight of the clouds beneath her, it was all surreal. Hours later she landed in the United States, but her joy was short-lived. The person who had promised to pick her up was not answering the phone. Panic gripped her. She stood alone in the vast airport, clutching her small bag. The minutes stretched into hours. People rushed past, indifferent to her plight. Then, out of nowhere, a young man appeared. "Are you okay?" he asked kindly. She hesitated but nodded. I need to make a call. I don't know where to go." He handed her his phone. She dialed home, her hands shaking. Her family was relieved to hear her voice but couldn't do much to help. As she hung up, the young man handed her a cup of coffee. "Drink this. It's cold out." She accepted it gratefully. Warmth spread through her body. "God bless you," she whispered. He smiled. "You'll be fine." She made several more calls, and eventually an old friend agreed to take her in. She turned to thank the young man, but he was gone. 6 months passed, and Wanjiru's life had changed. She had found work and settled into her new life. But something kept nagging at her. She wanted to thank the young man who had helped her. On that first night, she searched for his number in her call log, hoping to dial and hear his voice again. But there was nothing. No record of any call. No trace of his number. It was as if he had never existed. Her heart pounded. Who was he? An angel, a divine helper? Tears filled her eyes as she realized the truth. God had sent someone in her darkest hour, and she had entertained an angel without knowing it. From that day forward, Wanjiru's faith deepened. She had seen miracles, had encountered the divine, and had witnessed what faith could do. And though she never saw the young man again, she knew he had been sent for a reason. For those who heard her story, one question always remained. Was he real, or was he an angel? Only God knew the answer.